Hello everyone, welcome back. Uh, the weather is what it is, and we're not getting a whole lot done. Of course, we're in no great big rush. The biggest thing pushing us is that we will have transplants ready to go shortly, and what I mean is they'll be ready to out of the greenhouse into the field, and that's pretty time critical, but we have a little bit of a leeway there. So as we approach planting season, it is time to start putting in our soil amendments. Now we use bagged fertilizer for the most part, just for the simple reason our soils are so varied that we need different blends for different fields for different crops, and they're smaller amounts, so it just works best for us to buy it by the pallet, if you will, usually by the ton or whatever we need. But what we do a soil sample, we send it off to the lab in Raleigh, and they give us our analysis back, and we use that analysis for that crop. Now, with that being said, we do, based on our experience in a field, in a crop or whatever, we may load up on a certain ingredient or certain, not ingredient, but certain nutrient, and we may add some stuff along the way. We may subtract. Now, our soils tend to be low in phosphate. That's your middle number on a fertilizer bag or guaranteed analysis, and very low in pH, so we have to use lime. I have seen soil samples in this area recommend 2.5 tons of lime to an acre to get the pH to where it needs to be. But for the most part, that's the way we do it. Some of our crops we have fertilizer blended. We can get a pallet of it or so with a micro ingredient added, something a little different. But that's how we do it, and usually we'll use a combination. For the most part, our nitrogen source, we use ammonium nitrate, and that's typically what we use. Now, we try not to put our fertilizer out too early. We want to, ideally, we prep the ground, apply our fertilizer, incorporate it in, and then immediately pull or lay the plastic mulch that we're on our raised beds that we're going to do our transplanting in. Now, if we're direct seeding, what we'll typically do is prep the ground, apply the fertilizer, incorporate it, and plant as close as we can. But so as we get closer, we'll start buying the fertilizer. Now, we got to fertilize the hay fields and a few odds and ends there as well. And I cannot get rid of this head cold, sinus mess, whatever it is. But we, like I said, as we approach, that's what we'll be doing, and we'll buy bagged fertilizer. Now, most of the fertilizer we buy will have a high phosphate content. We also try to get fertilizer blended with a good blend of the micronutrients, magnesium, boron, stuff like that. So they seem to do better in our soils. But this year we're going to be farming excuse me, we're going to be farming on some ground we've never farmed before. Quite about half of what we're growing this year is on new ground to us. We do have soil analysis from tests in hand on them, so we got an idea of what they need. So what we'll do is we'll apply it. One of them needed quite a bit of lime. We'll get that out as quickly as we can, and then of course, usually on the new ground, if analysis calls for a recommended nutrient, we will go 5 to 10% above that recommendation, depending on the crop, because you can actually burn crops with fertilizer, and you can do damage with fertilizer. So it's kind of a tricky thing. Now, if it's a crop we're we've grown in the past, such as cabbage or corn or pumpkins or whatever. We know, you know, we've learned through trial and error that how far we can push the limit, if you will. But I recommend doing a soil sample. That gives you a good starting point. You can save a lot of money instead of just going out throwing out fertilizer. You know, you need to put out the nutrients that soil is lacking, that crop needs. And the only way to know that is to do a soil sample. And we may do a video on soil sampling. I hadn't thought of that, but we may do that. But what you want to do is get a good sample of that soil, send it off, and you got an idea of what to put on it. Now, some people will, another way to save more money is we broadcast. In other words, if we got an acre of corn and we need so much fertilizer per acre, we broadcast it over the whole field. And then we'll seed in the corn, everything's fertilized in that plot. Same with our vegetables on plastic. We do the same thing. Now you can, and there are people that on the plastic mulch, the drip line, the water line underneath it, they'll use a water soluble fertilizer and put that just to the plants. Now that's fine. You're only fertilizing what you need. Excuse me. If I don't cough up a lung here, I'll be all right. But that's fine. But what we try to do is build the whole soil up so the whole field is where we need to be. So we broadcast it out. We rarely do tissue samples, and that's where you take a tissue of the plant, you send it off to the lab, and they'll tell you what the plant is lacking in the plant. That's also a good policy on long day crops such as tomatoes or peppers. Most of ours are shorter day crops, so we don't have to deal with that as much. But our lime source, once again, is bagged. We're just not set up for the bulk at this time. We may be eventually. If we can get a truck into our fields, we'll get a local feed and seed store to put it out for us. It's a little cheaper, but you know, at this point we're not. We're just doing the bag lime. Goodness gracious. Anyhow, so the weather's cool today. It's supposed to warm up, be nice this week, so hopefully we'll start getting some ground prep ready. You know, you're at the mercy of the weather. When the ground's ready to work, you work it, and when it ain't, you can't. I mean, that's just the way it is. So hopefully we'll get that done, start getting some crops in the field. It is early. We've never went this early before, and the reason we're going this early is we're shooting for a particular market. We want these crops to come off at a certain time, and we are shooting for that market, and that's why we're going in a little early. It is a risk. It is a gamble. We may wind up losing some stuff, and we may not. But that's a little bit about fertilizer. We will start buying some real shortly and hauling it in. So when we get ready to put it out, we just go to the barn or the shed and get it versus having to run to the distributor and pick it up. So with all that being said, the time is upon us to start spending some money, and that's just the way it goes. With all that being said, I hope you learned something. If you haven't subscribed to us and enjoy what we do, subscribe to us. Check us out on our Facebook page, Rocky Hollow Farm. I don't put a whole lot on there, but occasionally I'll put something on there. See a video you like, let us know. If you don't like it, let us know. Comment, whatever. Whatever you think. So until next time, we will talk to you guys later. Have a good day. Bye.